Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this very interesting tool right here. This is the Leatherman OHT. First off, I want to thank my buddy John for sending this little guy along. This is a tool I've been curious about for a long time, but never had a chance to handle, so thanks very much to that. And let's do a quick size comparison. First off, of course, your Spyderco Delica pocket knife, which I'm going to just throw onto the screen here. Standard U.S. quarter. This guy right here is the Leatherman Wave, and so you can see that the Wave is actually substantially smaller than this guy, as is the Leatherman Charge, although by a slightly less margin. Right here is your Leatherman Wingman, which is way smaller than the OHT. And I think that ought to do it for size comparison. You can find the rest of the specs online. Then a quick note on this guy. OHT actually stands for one-hand tool. And the reason for that is that, well, this is a tool that's designed for people who can only use one hand to deploy it. So in order to deploy the pliers, you grab right here, and then you grab over here, and then gravity takes care of the rest, and you've got yourself a deployed tool in your hands there. Put it back, you just do the reverse of that. And in fact, all of the tools are one-hand deployable here. So you've got yourself a little pry bar / small screwdriver. Over here, and I'm just going to try and do this with just one hand here, to give it a try. You've got yourself a larger flathead sort of driver. A little trick here, because I'm not super skilled in this way. Here we go. That'll probably work better. Right here, you've got yourself a Phillips head screwdriver, which you can deploy. Right here, you've got yourself a cap lifter / can opener going on there. And then over here, you've got yourself a saw sort of blade. You've got yourself a regular sort of knife blade. You've got yourself a hook, sort of cutting hook, as well as an oxygen tank wrench. And then finally over here, you've got yourself a serrated knife blade. So those are the tools that are available on this little guy. And let's go on ahead and talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of the Leatherman OHT here. So on the good side, first off, this guy does come with a belt pouch, as do many Leathermans, but that's actually a little more important here. This guy doesn't have a clip, and really this belt pouch is, again, nicely designed for one-hand access, because you've got a nice big flap right over here. It's pretty straightforward to do, and it seems to be well fit to this particular tool. So it works. It's also a different pouch than most Leathermans. It's got a little bit less accessorization on the side there, and it is MOLLE compatible on the back here, so you can just pop this little guy out of there and then thread it in through a MOLLE strap system or something like that. So there you go. That's one nice thing going on there. Next thing on the good side, you can see here that this guy has a wire cutter right here, which I think I forgot to mention in the tool tour, but there you go. But the wire cutter actually has replaceable cutting surfaces out of 154 cm steel. Compare that to, say, your Leatherman Wave, which does not. These cutting surfaces are just built into the tool and are made of the same steel as the rest of the tool. That's actually a very nice little thing, because it's very easy to damage those surfaces if you cut something that's a little bit harder than the pliers are. So there you go. Next thing about this little guy, and I'm trying to do as much of this one-handed as I can, just in the spirit of the review, is that you can do this guy, you can lock the pliers inside the tool using this little lever right here, because if you give it a little rotation, this is now kind of fixed in there, and so there's no way that you can pop this little guy loose. And so this means that as you're actually using the rest of the tools, you're not going to have to worry about the pliers deploying if you pinch it wrong. It's not something I found the need to use carrying it in the belt sheath or anything like that, but it is a nice little option that you've got there, and I appreciate very much. So that's good. Next thing, the assortment of tools on this guy is actually kind of nice. I appreciate a couple of things very specifically. This little tiny tool here, this little flathead guy, these are really spectacularly useful in my opinion, and it's something that I miss on tools like the Wave or the Wingman or something like that, because these are great not just for using, for small screws and things like that, but they can also be very good for scraping or for little tiny prying jobs, like if you've got a plastic case of something that you're trying to take apart and you just need to get in there and pop it open. Your full-size driver is going to be a little bit too thick for this, but this nice, thin little, that's just what the doctor ordered. So I love seeing those on tools. Another thing that I like very much is the cutting hook on this guy. This is nice in a couple of ways. First off, from a one-hand perspective, that can be a very efficient way to cut something that you can't stabilize with the other hand. And also, it's nice as a seatbelt popper, and you got a couple of other options for it, so I like that very much. As well, it's accessibility, and then having those hardened wire cutters on there is really a beautiful thing, along with what looks to be a passable wire stripper down here in the middle there. So that's a very nice thing. Next thing, this is a really subtle detail, but I'll be honest, it blew me away when I noticed it. If you look at the engraving, so to speak, on the tool itself, you can see that right here, you see a bit of a serrated blade, and indeed, right underneath that is the serrated blade. Up here, you see this little pointy area implying this little tool right here. You see a Phillips head, you get a Phillips head. You see a gut hook, you get a gut hook. See the knife blade, you get a blade. You see the saw, you get a saw, etc. Every single tool is labeled visually on the exterior of the thing. And honestly, that's kind of nice, because if you look at a tool like the Leatherman Wave here, there is no such labeling. The closest thing you get on the Wave is the fact that, you know, your serrated blade is marked with these little notches and your regular one isn't. But there's a little bit of guesswork if you're not using the tool all the damn time, and this removes some of that. So it's a little tiny detail, but it's a detail I really love. Another thing that I like a lot is the fact that every single tool on this tool locks, which can be a very nice thing. I mean, that's also the case, for instance, on your Wave via Charge, but, you know, they've done it well with these little leaf spring liner lock sorts of affairs. It is a nice little detail, and especially if you're using one of these tools more for something like prying, it's very easy for an unlocked tool to kind of get deformed, deflected back into its little case there. So that's nice. The pliers themselves are nice in that not only are the ergonomics pretty good here, you can see it's a nice wide handle, but they're also spring-loaded, which means if I just let go here, these are going to pop back open. And they're spring-loaded strongly enough that even held vertically, it's going to pop right back open. So again, that's a nice little detail here. And the spring loading is not too aggro that it becomes a problem to use, but it's also, they've done a great freaking job of that. And then finally, on the good side, the price on this guy is $90. Now, that's a lot of money, 100%. And it's not maybe good in the classical sense, like, this isn't like, oh my God, outstanding value. But what it is the exact same price as the Leatherman Wave. And so I appreciate very much that they've taken what is a very niche tool designed for a niche population, and they've made it the same price as their other flagship thing. I know that this probably could have been more, but I like the fact that they kept it to that same range. So to me, this is what's good about this tool here, is that you've got a good price to it. You've got spring loading on the pliers that's just great. Every tool locks and is labeled visually on there. It has a nice assortment of some useful tools. The pliers can lock in the handle. You get the replaceable jaws and the wire cutter, and it comes with a belt pouch, which is a nice little affair. Let's talk about what's great here. On the great side to me, I love tools that are designed with a very odd or specific use case in mind, because they can be really cool in a creativity sense. That constraint can beget something really excellent. I think this is another case of that, because Leatherman has here, as I mentioned, designed a tool that is universally one-hand operable, and they have absolutely accomplished that, because these pliers are very easy and frankly very fun to deploy just using one hand, as well as to put back, because all you need to do, you can either do it using, you know, physics and inertia and whatnot, or you can use just any kind of a flat surface to redeploy those pliers. This little pinch system works spectacularly. That's very, very nice, and every single tool is very easily fingerable out, so to speak. Unlike, for instance, on your Charge here, where you have to get in there with a nail nick. On this is just better. The fact that they've given you these pop opens on every single tool is really, really nice. It is an improvement, substantially. And I mean, compared to, like, for instance, getting to these little tools inside the Charge of the Wave, which is just terrible. It's nail nick hell. This is great in that way. And so I just love the fact that this is absolutely 100% and unquestionably perfectly designed for that one-hand use. And it's not just usable with one hand, because let's face it, you could probably use the Wave one-handed. You, like, pop it open as something like Balisong style. I mean, you could do that, and you can get to the knife blade at least. And, you know, if you're really good with one hand, I'm sure you could make it work. But this is not only usable, but it's efficient with one hand. And so I love the fact that they took that constraint, they ran with it, and they made something that really gracefully addresses the issue and completely nails it. So that to me is what's great, is that they've really nailed a weird constraint. Let's talk about what's bad here. So on the bad side, first, one thing that isn't really bad, it's not really possible, but it might disappoint some people, is that this does not use the bit kit drivers from Leatherman. They make a little kit that has a bunch of these little swappable bits and makes this even handier tool than it already is, takes extensions and things like that. But the thing is, this little holder for the bits is relatively thick. It can only fit inside the handle on the Wave here, and they don't have room for that on this guy. So this is not bit kit compatible. And it probably wouldn't be very one-hand friendly even if it was, so, you know, it's not a big deal, but just don't be disappointed if that's what you're after here. Next thing, I gotta be honest with you, the belt loop, although it works okay, or I'm sorry, the belt case, although it works okay, it is a little frustrating in some ways, particularly back here, because you can see here that if you're trying to side mount this on a belt, it's a little bit awkward. I mean, maybe you could cut out this flap, but even still, it's only going to work on relatively thin belts in terms of this vertical dimension. And on the horizontal side, this is really clearly made for molly sheaths. I'm sorry, if you want to hang it, I guess it'd be vertical. This is not super great for hanging on a belt. You'd kind of need to pop this guy up out of here and then back underneath here, and then now you've got this snap down there poking at you. I mean, yeah, it can mount, but then you've got this thing. I don't know. I don't love the case there. It's not great for belt use, which is where I think a lot of people end up using these kinds of tools. And so I'm not a huge fan of that, but that's kind of nitpicky. I'm going to be real here. The knife, speaking of nitpicks, is a relatively crappy steel. You're using 420 HC. And what's a little extra frustrating to me is that although the knife is 420 HC, which is a steel that's okay, but it's not going to hold an edge that well, the wire cutters are using 154 cm, which is a great steel, and so clearly they've got it right here. Why couldn't it have just spread downward a little bit? Even just on the straight edge knife, that would have been a substantial improvement. And I know that on, for instance, the Charge, they're moving up to better steels. Multi-tools have crappy steels generally, and that makes me a little sad. And then finally, on the bad side, you have to realize there is a bit of handedness to this tool, in that even, if you've got one hand, let's say you take this out and you want to get the plane edge, which is arguably the thing you're going to end up using most, that is really favoring right-handers, because for a lefty holding this in your hand, the most accessible tool is actually the saw. And so if you're a lefty and you want to use the knife, you actually have to use your ring finger here, which I am not skilled enough to do with my left hand. You can absolutely make it happen, but, God, I am a terrible lefty. But realize that there is a little bit of hand bias to this. So your life's going to be marginally easier to get to some of the more useful tools if you're a righty rather than a lefty. So there you go. But those are the bad things, and honestly, none of them are that bad. It's a little bit right-hand favoring in terms of accessibility of commonly used tools. They've got a crappy steel on the knife, even though they've got a really good steel just right over here. The case is unfortunately not that great on a belt. It adds more than you need. It's really molly-centric. And then finally, it doesn't take drivers from the Leatherman bit kit, but it probably couldn't, so that's not a big deal. Let's talk about what's ugly here. On the ugly front is just one thing, and that is the size of this guy. This is a very large tool, and it's surprisingly large. In terms of just sheer dimensions, I mean, compared to the Wingman, which is a smaller tool in Leatherman's lineup, this guy is absolutely huge. But even compared to the Leatherman Wave, which is a full-size tool by any definition, this guy is adding some additional size on top of it. It's also adding some additional weight. This guy comes in at 9.6 ounces, whereas the Wave comes in at 8.6. So you're gaining basically an additional ounce as well as a fair amount of footprint to actually move to this tool. And so this is non-trivial. And you really do have to keep that in mind. That is a major disimprovement? What's the opposite of an improvement? I'll figure it out someday. Either way, a downside, I suppose, relative to the Wave. Man, that action. So that to me is what's ugly here, is that relative to your Wave, this is a much bigger tool, and it's also a fair bit heavier. Let's talk about the final conclusion. Look, final conclusions, at some level I absolutely applaud Leatherman for just making this tool at all. They have made a tool here that is absolutely designed well for one niche group, people who need one-hand operation above anything else. And whether that's because you lost a limb, because you lost function in one hand or arm, or you just find your other hand constantly full with some other tool or another, Leatherman has got your back here. And the thing is, they didn't have to do this. This is not a tool that they're going to sell a billion of. This is not a tool that every single person needs. needs. Instead, I kind of feel like this is a designer at Leatherman sitting back and thinking, okay, there's this group of people who are down to one hand. That really sucks. How can we make their lives better? How can we make life easier for these folks? And more importantly, how can we do it really well? And they did do it really well. It would be very easy to phone in a niche tool like this to make something that's okay, I guess, for one hand. But they've made something that is really, really great for this group of people, and it's the same price as just any other high-end Leatherman. They didn't go the, oh, well, it's a niche tool, so we're going to charge $800 for it. They'll pay it. No, they didn't do that. And so, at some level, major freaking respect just for making this tool. And because the thing is, if you need this niche, if you are down a hand, or if you just value one-hand operation above anything else, this is a really spectacular tool, and I think for you specifically, this is probably going to be a gem. But that's not a shock. It's, tailor-made for a group. Of course they're going to freaking love it. I hope. Let me know if you're in a situation where you'd need this. How do you feel about the tool? In the comments there. But the tougher question, the bigger question for me is, well, how does this work for folks who don't need one-hand access, who are happy with a two-handed tool most of the time? Is the OHT also a good THT, a two-handed tool? And, at some level, sure, it's fine. I mean, I carried this guy around. I used it. You know what? It works. It's a solid Leatherman. It's a good tool. Every tool on here works as required. And at some level, the easy accessibility of these tools was a nice improvement. And so if this is the Leatherman you have, or if somebody's offering you one in trade, or, for whatever reason you get a great deal, sure, it's a good Leatherman. It's solid. It works. But the thing is, if you're just looking to buy a brand new tool, and you're planning mostly on two-handed use, I would probably steer you towards the Wave for a couple of reasons. It's a little bit smaller, a little lighter. It is compatible with that Leatherman bit kit, which is a beautiful thing if you can do it. You do get a slightly larger knife and saw and those kinds of things. You get a couple of additional tools. You get a pair of scissors and a precision driver, and you get a slightly more solid feeling construction, because this guy is a little rattly. And you're going to pay the same price for it. But, I still like the OHT a lot. And so I guess, in summary, though, if you're just looking for a Leatherman, you know what? I would probably send you towards the Wave. But if you need the OHT's very specific function, well, you're going to love this tool. And I think you should absolutely keep one handy. No? Okay, yeah. Anyways, hope this has been interesting, that this review was a good tool in your decision-making process, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.